At the restaurant, Billionaire's son won't stop crying, until Waitress whispered, "He really needs a mom." The warehouse was cold, dark, and in that darkness, a man who'd built a $12 billion empire was begging. "Please." Harrison Caldwell's voice cracked as he stared up at his brother-in-law on the catwalk above. "Please don't hurt him. I'll do anything. Anything you want." Vincent Ashford's laugh echoed through the abandoned Brooklyn waterfront building. His hand gripped the collar of an 8-year-old boy who stood frozen with terror. "Anything? You've already destroyed everything, Harrison. You released the evidence. You exposed the conspiracy. There's nothing left to bargain with. Then what do you want?" A woman's voice cut through the standoff. Sienna Hayes stood beside Harrison, her own daughter being held by Vincent's accomplice 20 feet away. "If there's nothing to bargain with, what's your endgame here?" Vincent's eyes were wild. He dragged the boy closer to the edge of the catwalk. "Since Harrison took everything from me, I'm taking something from him." The boy, Jasper, looked at his father, and then, for the first time in 3 years of selective mutism, he screamed, "Dad!" That single word changed everything, because 6 months earlier, that same boy hadn't spoken at all. He'd sit in restaurants and cry silently while his father conducted business, until a waitress with her own tragic secret knelt beside him and whispered something that would unravel a conspiracy, expose murderers, and transform 4 broken lives into something no amount of money could buy. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because every impossible love story, every shocking conspiracy, every moment of redemption starts somewhere simple. Sometimes it starts with tears streaming down a child's face in the middle of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. Sometimes it starts with a single mother working a shift she can barely afford to miss. And sometimes it starts with the kind of desperation that only a parent drowning in their own failures can understand. This is that story. And before we go any further, if you believe in second chances, if you believe broken people can find healing in the most unexpected places, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Dr. Phillips, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about family, love, and the price of truth. Now let me take you back to where it all began. To a restaurant, to tears, to the moment when silence finally broke. The silence was what struck Sienna Hayes first. In the bustling heart of Astor's, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurant where champagne flowed like water and conversation hummed like electricity, there was a pocket of absolute quiet at table 7. The kind of quiet that felt wrong, unnatural, like a wound in the fabric of sound itself. Sienna had been weaving between tables for the past 4 hours, her feet aching in the required heels, her smile professionally fixed, despite the exhaustion that lived in her bones these days. She'd served movie stars who complained about the temperature of their wine, business moguls who didn't look up from their phones long enough to say thank you, socialites who treated her like furniture. 4 years she'd been doing this. 4 years since she'd moved to Manhattan with her 7-year-old daughter, Ruby, trying to outrun the ghosts of her late husband's death. 4 years of pretending the weight of grief and single motherhood wasn't slowly crushing her. But something about table 7 made her pause mid-stride. An 8-year-old boy sat rigid in his chair, tears streaming silently down his pale cheeks. His small hands were clenched in his lap. His shoulders shook with suppressed sobs. And across from him, a man in an immaculate charcoal suit spoke in hushed, urgent tones to 3 other men who kept glancing uncomfortably at the quietly weeping child. The boy's untouched plate of gourmet pasta sat before him, growing cold. The tears just kept coming. Silent, relentless, like he'd forgotten how to make sound. Table 7 needs a check-in. Marcus, the floor manager, appeared at Sienna's elbow. His voice was low. "Careful. Tread lightly. That's Harrison Caldwell." The name meant nothing to Sienna, though she nodded like it did. She'd learned early that admitting ignorance about the wealthy made them feel less important, and offended wealthy people tipped poorly. "Who's the boy?" she asked. "His son." Marcus adjusted his tie. "There's been some tragedy in the family. The mother died a few years back. Mr. Caldwell is one of our most valued clients. Handle it delicately." Sienna watched the child's shoulders shake. Watched the father continue his business conversation without pause. Watched the other men at the table shift in their seats, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to acknowledge the crying child directly. Something in her chest twisted. She saw her own daughter in that boy. Saw every moment Ruby had cried for a father she barely remembered. Saw the loneliness that no amount of money could fix. "I've got it." Sienna straightened her shoulders and crossed the dining room. "Good evening, gentlemen." Her voice was warm, professional, practiced. "How are we enjoying the tasting menu this evening?" Harrison Caldwell looked up briefly. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with steel gray eyes. That held the particular exhaustion of someone who'd forgotten how to rest. His voice was clipped, distracted. "Everything's fine. Wonderful." Sienna's gaze moved to the boy. "And what about you? How's your dinner?" The child's red-rimmed eyes met hers, startled, like he wasn't used to being addressed directly. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "He doesn't," Harrison began, a note of warning in his tone. But Sienna had already done something that would have gotten her fired at any other establishment. She knelt beside the boy's chair, bringing herself to eye level with him, breaking every protocol of the five-star restaurant, crossing every professional boundary. "I have a daughter about your age." Her voice was soft, gentle, just for him. "She's 7. Her name is Ruby, and sometimes when she's sad, I ask her to tell me 3 things she can see that are beautiful. Want to try?" The silence stretched. One of the businessmen cleared his throat uncomfortably. Another glanced at his watch. Harrison's jaw tightened, and then, so quietly that Sienna almost missed it, the boy whispered, "The lights." The reaction was instantaneous. Harrison's hand froze halfway to his tablet. The businessmen stopped their hushed conversation. Every eye at the table locked on the child. Sienna's heart hammered, but she kept her voice calm, steady. "The lights," she repeated softly, like coaxing a wild creature closer. The boy nodded. His voice was barely audible, but it was there. "Present, real. They look like stars." "They do." Sienna smiled, genuine warmth flooding through her. "That's one. Can you find 2 more?" The boy's gaze traveled around the restaurant, past the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, past the crystal chandeliers, past the other diners in their expensive clothes. His eyes came back to Sienna. "Your smile." He whispered the words like a confession, and then he reached across the table. His small hand found his father's, "And my dad." Harrison Caldwell looked at his son with an expression of such raw, unguarded hope that Sienna had to look away. It was too intimate, too painful, like witnessing someone's heart break and heal simultaneously. "Those are 3 very beautiful things," Sienna managed, her throat tight. She stood carefully, aware she'd just crossed a dozen professional boundaries, aware that Marcus was probably watching from across the room, aware that she'd done something that couldn't be undone. "If you need anything else," she smoothed her apron. "My name is Sienna." As she turned to leave, Harrison's hand caught her wrist, not roughly, not inappropriately, but with the desperate precision of a man clutching a lifeline. "What's your full name?" "Sienna Hayes." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Impossible. They'd never met. "Don't leave yet." Harrison released her wrist and addressed the businessmen without looking at them. "Gentlemen, we'll continue this discussion tomorrow. My son needs me." The dismissal was absolute. The businessmen exchanged glances. One opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it. Within minutes, they'd gathered their things and left, murmuring polite goodbyes that Harrison barely acknowledged. Sienna stood awkwardly between the table and her duty to her other customers. The restaurant was still full. She had orders to take, drinks to refill, plates to clear. "He hasn't spoken to anyone but me in 3 years. Harrison's voice was low, controlled, but she could hear the tremor beneath it. Not his therapists, not his teachers, not anyone. And just now, he spoke to you. "I didn't know." Sienna looked at the boy, who was watching her with those haunted blue eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overstep." "You didn't overstep." Harrison leaned forward, His intensity was unsettling, focused, like he was trying to solve a complex equation and she was the missing variable. "Ms. Hayes, I'd like to offer you a position." Sienna blinked. "I already have a position. Here, at the restaurant." "Not at the restaurant." "Not with Astor's." Harrison pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, withdrew a pen, wrote something on the back. "With me, with my son." She stared at him. "I don't understand. My son's name is Jasper. He's 8 years old. His mother died 3 years ago in an accident, and he hasn't spoken to anyone outside our immediate household since." Harrison's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes betrayed him. "I've hired child psychologists, therapists, specialists from all over the country. None of them have been able to reach him the way you just did in 5 minutes. Mr. Caldwell, I'm not a therapist. I'm a waitress. I don't have any training in childhood trauma or selective mutism or whatever diagnosis." "Exactly." Harrison placed the card on the table between them. "You weren't trying to fix him. You just saw him, connected with him." He paused, seeming to wage some internal war. "I'm not looking for a therapist, Ms. Hayes. I'm looking for someone who can be present in my son's life in a way I've clearly failed to be." The admission hung in the air. Raw, honest, the kind of vulnerability that powerful men rarely showed. Sienna glanced at Jasper, who was watching the exchange with quiet intensity, then back at Harrison. "This is highly irregular. I'm aware, but I'm also aware that I'm losing my son to silence and grief, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bring him back." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Call the number on that card. My assistant will arrange a meeting. Come to my office." "Hear me out. If you're not interested after that, I'll respect your decision, and you'll never hear from me again. And if I don't call, then I'll have missed an opportunity, and my son will have lost someone who made him smile for the first time in 3 years. Harrison stood, helping Jasper from his chair. "The choice is yours, Ms. Hayes." He placed 5 $100 bills on the table. Far more than the cost of their meal. Far more than any reasonable tip. "For your time and your kindness." Harrison held out his hand. Sienna shook it automatically. His grip was warm, steady, the hand of someone used to making deals and expecting them to be honored. "Thank you." Jasper's small voice made them both look down. The boy was staring at Sienna with something that might have been hope. "Thank you for the game. You're welcome." Sienna knelt one more time, bringing herself to his level. "Anytime you're sad, you can play it. Find 3 beautiful things. It helps, doesn't it?" Jasper nodded. Then, impulsively, he stepped forward and hugged her. A quick, fierce embrace that lasted barely 3 seconds before he pulled away and retreated behind his father. Sienna stood slowly, her eyes stinging. She watched them leave, father and son walking through the restaurant toward the elevator. Harrison's hand resting protectively on Jasper's shoulder, the boy looking back once, just before they disappeared from view. Marcus appeared at her elbow the moment they were gone. "What just happened?" "I have no idea." Sienna stared at the business card on the table, at the money, at the 3 abandoned plates of food. But something had happened. Something that felt both terrifying and inevitable, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you were always meant to jump. That night, after her shift ended at midnight, Sienna rode the subway, back to Queens with the business card burning a hole in her purse. The train rattled through the dark tunnels. Homeless men slept across the seats. A street performer with a broken guitar sang off-key. This was her world. Subway rides and cramped apartments and counting tips to see if she could afford Ruby's school supplies this month. Harrison Caldwell's world was rooftop restaurants and business cards with personal phone, numbers, and the kind of wealth that left $500 as a casual thank you. Those worlds didn't mix, couldn't mix, and yet... Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend Darius, who was watching Ruby for the evening. "Your daughter wants to know why you're late. Also, she drew another picture of Daddy in heaven, and I'm not equipped to handle these feelings. Get home soon." Sienna closed her eyes. Ruby drew those pictures at least once a week. Her late husband Daniel, who died in a car accident when Ruby was barely 2 years old, who Ruby claimed to remember but probably didn't, who lived on in crayon drawings and bedtime stories and the aching absence that shaped their entire lives. What would Daniel think of tonight? Of the crying boy and the desperate billionaire and the offer that made no sense? She pulled out the business card, studied it under the flickering fluorescent lights of the subway car. Harrison Caldwell, CEO, Caldwell Industries, and on the back, in strong, angular handwriting, call me. Please. The please got her. Men like Harrison Caldwell probably didn't use that word often. Sienna arrived home to their third-floor walk-up at 1 a.m. Darius was asleep on their sagging couch, his tall frame folded uncomfortably. Ruby was curled in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals, her latest drawing on the nightstand. In the picture, a stick figure with a halo floated in a sky full of stars. Below, 2 figures stood on the ground, one tall and one small, looking up. Mommy and Ruby, the caption said in Ruby's careful handwriting. Missing Daddy. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed, watching her daughter sleep. Ruby had Daniel's dark curls, his long eyelashes, his gentle spirit. At 7 years old, she was smart and funny and carried a sadness that no child should have to carry. What if Harrison Caldwell's offer could change things? What if whatever position he had in mind came with the kind of money that meant Ruby could go to a better school? Have dance classes, have a childhood that wasn't defined by what they couldn't afford? What if it was a trap? What if Harrison Caldwell was dangerous? What if? Hey, Darius's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. You okay? Long night. Sienna stood, pulling Ruby's door halfway closed. Come on, I'll make tea. In their tiny kitchen with its chipped counters and ancient refrigerator, Sienna told Darius everything. About the crying boy, about Harrison Caldwell, about the offer she didn't understand. He wants to pay you to be what exactly? Darius asked, stirring honey into his tea. A professional friend? A stand-in mom? I don't know. That's why he wants me to come to his office. To explain. And you're considering it. It wasn't a question. Darius knew her too well. The money would be life-changing. Sienna wrapped her hands around her mug. Whatever he's offering, it has to pay better than the restaurant. And Ruby deserves stability. I know. Darius gave her a long look. But she also deserves a mom who's not selling her soul to a billionaire with unclear motives. It's not like that, isn't it? He leaned against the counter. Sienna, you're one of the most genuinely kind people I know. This guy saw that, saw how you connected with his kid, and now he wants to what? Purchase that kindness? Put it on payroll? The words stung because they echoed her own doubts. Or, Darius's voice softened. He's a desperate dad who saw someone help his son, and he's grasping at straws. Could be that simple. Could be. Only one way to find out. Sienna stared into her tea, saw her reflection rippling on the surface. When did life get this complicated? Probably the moment you decided to move to Manhattan with a toddler and a dead husband's life insurance that barely covered the deposit on this place. Darius smiled sadly. You've been making impossible choices for 5 years, Sienna. This is just another one. After Darius left, Sienna lay in bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. She thought about Jasper's tears, about Harrison's desperate eyes, about Ruby's drawings of a father she barely remembered. And she thought about the moment when Jasper had whispered, "The lights look like stars." Something about that image. The lights, the stars, the beauty found in dark places. It felt like a sign, though Sienna didn't usually believe in signs. At 3 a.m, she pulled out her laptop and searched for Harrison Caldwell. The results were overwhelming. Tech prodigy builds first company at 19. Billionaire by 30% after revolutionary chronic pain medication. Caldwell Industries dominates pharmaceutical market with Nexaprol. Wife, Elizabeth Caldwell, dies in private plane crash. Reclusive CEO rarely makes public appearances after family tragedy. She clicked through images. Harrison at charity galas, looking stiff and uncomfortable. Harrison shaking hands with politicians, his smile not reaching his eyes. Harrison at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, his expression distant. And then, buried in a 3-year-old article, Caldwell refuses to hire another nanny after son's kidnapping attempt. Sienna's blood ran cold. She read the article twice. According to sources close to the family, a nanny hired through a prestigious agency had been part of a plot to kidnap 8-year-old Jasper Caldwell for ransom. The attempt was foiled by private security, but Harrison Caldwell has since refused to hire household staff with access to his son. The incident occurred just weeks after the death of Caldwell's wife Elizabeth in a plane crash, adding another layer of trauma to the grieving family. No wonder Harrison was paranoid. No wonder Jasper had stopped speaking. The boy had lost his mother and nearly been kidnapped in the span of a month. Sienna closed her laptop, stared at the wall, thought about what it meant to let someone like Harrison Caldwell into her life, into Ruby's life. This wasn't just about money or opportunity. This was about trust, about risk, about whether she was brave enough or foolish enough to say yes to something that made no logical sense. The business card sat on her nightstand. In the darkness, she could just make out the words. "Call me, please." Morning came too quickly. Sienna woke to Ruby jumping on her bed, full of the chaotic energy of a 7-year-old who'd slept well. "Mama, Mama, can we have pancakes? Can we go to the park? Darius said you met a prince last night." "He said what?" Sienna sat up, her head fuzzy from too little sleep. "He said you met a really rich man with a sad son." Ruby's expression turned serious. "Is the boy okay?" Leave it to her daughter to focus on that detail. "He's sad because his mom died. Like how you're sad about Daddy sometimes." "Oh," Ruby processed this. "Did you make him feel better?" "I tried." Sienna pulled her daughter close. "I played a game with him, the one we play, finding beautiful things. And did it work?" "I think so." He smiled a little. Ruby beamed. "Then you should see him again. Sad kids need help. Out of the mouths of children." Sienna kissed the top of her daughter's head. "You're pretty wise, you know that." "I'm 7 3/4. Ruby said it like it explained everything. "So can we have pancakes?" They made pancakes together in their cramped kitchen, Ruby standing on a step stool to help pour batter, making shapes. A heart, a star, a lopsided circle that was supposed to be a face. And while they cooked, Sienna made a decision. She would call Harrison Caldwell. She would hear him out. She would take Ruby's wisdom seriously, because sometimes children saw things more clearly than adults. Sad kids need help. And maybe, just maybe, this was something she was meant to do. At 9 o'clock, after dropping Ruby at school, Sienna stood outside a bodega and dialed the number on the card. A woman answered on the second ring. "Caldwell Industries, Mr. Caldwell's office. This is Patricia. How may I help you?" "My name is Sienna Hayes. Mr. Caldwell asked me to call." A brief pause. Then, in a warmer tone, "Ms. Hayes." "Yes. Mr. Caldwell has been expecting your call. Are you available to come in this morning?" "This morning?" Sienna checked her watch. She had a shift at the restaurant at 3. "I suppose I could." "Excellent. Would 10 o'clock work? I'll send a car to pick you up." "What's your address?" Sienna gave it automatically, then immediately regretted it. "A car? I can take the subway. Mr. Caldwell insists." Patricia's tone suggested this wasn't up for debate. "The car will be there in 30 minutes. The call ended before Sienna could protest further. 30 minutes later, a sleek black town car pulled up outside her building. The driver, a professional man in his 50s, opened the door without a word. Sienna slid into the back seat, feeling completely out of place in her clearance rack interview dress and scuffed flats. The car's interior was all leather and technology, and that particular smell of expensive things. They drove from Queens into Manhattan, the city transforming outside the window, her neighborhood of bodegas and laundromats giving way to glass towers and designer boutiques. Caldwell Industries headquarters dominated the skyline, a tower of steel and glass that seemed to touch the clouds. The driver pulled into an underground garage, swiped a keycard, and drove to a private elevator. "This will take you directly to the executive floor." He handed her a visitor's badge. "Ms. Winters will meet you there." "Thank you." Sienna stepped out, her heels clicking on the polished concrete. The elevator doors closed behind the car, leaving her alone in the pristine garage. The elevator that opened before her had mirrored walls and soft lighting. She pressed the button marked PH and felt her stomach drop as it shot upward. 63 floors in under a minute. When the doors opened, Patricia Winters was waiting. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and immaculate professional attire. Ms. Hayes, welcome. She extended her hand. I'm Patricia, Mr. Caldwell's executive assistant. He's just finishing a call. May I offer you coffee? Water? Water would be great. Sienna's mouth was dry. Patricia led her through a reception area that looked like a museum. Modern art on the walls, furniture that probably cost more than Sienna's annual salary. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Central Park. Mr. Caldwell will see you now. Patricia opened a door and gestured her through. The office was exactly what Sienna had expected. Minimalist, expensive, with windows that overlooked the entire city like Harrison Caldwell owned it, which in some ways he probably did. What she hadn't expected was Jasper. The boy sat in a corner of the massive room, quietly building something with electronic blocks. He looked up when Sienna entered, and his face transformed. Not quite a smile, but close. Recognition. Relief. Ms. Hayes. Harrison stood from behind his desk. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow. Human. Thank you for coming. Mr. Caldwell. Sienna nodded, hyper-aware of Jasper watching them. Please, sit. Harrison gestured to a chair across from his desk, then seemed to reconsider. Actually, would you mind if we spoke more casually? This feels too formal. He moved to a seating area by the windows, 2 sofas facing each other across a glass coffee table. Sienna sat carefully, smoothing her dress. I admit, I'm curious. She decided directness was best. What position could you possibly have in mind for someone with my qualifications? Or lack thereof? Harrison settled across from her. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. The night at the restaurant. What exactly did you say to Jasper? I suggested we play a game, finding beautiful things when we're sad. It's something I do with my daughter. And how did you know that's what he needed? I didn't. Sienna glanced at Jasper, who was pretending to focus on his blocks but clearly listening. I just knew what works with Ruby. Children usually need connection more than solutions. Something shifted in Harrison's expression. Recognition. Regret. That's precisely why I asked you here today, Ms. Hayes. I'm not looking for an employee for my company. I'm looking for someone for Jasper. The words hung between them. Like a nanny? Sienna asked carefully. Not exactly. Harrison's eyes moved to his son, then back to her. Jasper has tutors. He has security. He has household staff who ensure his physical needs are met. What he lacks is... He paused, seeming uncharacteristically unsure. A consistent, emotional presence. Sienna finished the sentence quietly. Someone who sees him as a person, not a problem to solve. Yes. Harrison leaned forward. Exactly that. From his corner, Jasper abandoned any pretense of not listening. His small hands had stopped moving over the electronic blocks. He was watching them intently. Mr. Caldwell. Sienna chose her words carefully. I appreciate that you're trying to help your son, but you can't hire someone to care about him. That's not how emotional connection works. I'm not trying to hire someone to care. Harrison's voice tightened. I'm trying to hire someone to show him that it's safe to care again. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you're trying to solve an emotional problem with money. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that probably contributed to the problem in the first place. The words were harsher than she'd intended. Sienna watched Harrison's expression close off, watched him retreat behind the controlled mask of a CEO who wasn't used to being challenged. But then, surprisingly, he didn't argue. Instead, he stood and walked to the windows, stared out at the city below. You're right. His voice was quiet. My wife used to tell me the same thing, that I tried to fix everything with resources instead of presence, that I was building an empire while our family crumbled. Sienna waited, let the silence stretch. Catherine, Harrison's reflection in the window looked haunted. That was her name. She died 3 years ago. The official report said the plane she was on experienced mechanical failure. Quick, painless, that's what they told me. I'm sorry, Jasper was in the house when I got the call. Harrison continued like he hadn't heard her. He was 5 years old. I had to tell my 5-year-old son that his mother was never coming home. And I did it badly. I was in shock. I was. He stopped. I failed him that day, and I've been failing him ever since. Across the room, Jasper's eyes were wet, but he didn't make a sound. Harrison turned from the window. You asked what position I'm offering. I'm offering you whatever role you need it to be. Companion, tutor. Someone who can be there for Jasper in ways I've clearly proven I cannot. And if it doesn't work, if Jasper doesn't respond to me the way he did at the restaurant. 3 months. Harrison's voice turned businesslike. Give it 3 months. Regardless of the outcome, I'll establish a trust for your daughter's education. Full tuition through graduate school if she chooses to pursue it. Sienna's breath caught. That was impossible, life-changing, suspiciously generous. Mr. Caldwell, that's an enormous commitment for something that might not work. It's an investment in my son's well-being. Harrison met her eyes. And call me Harrison. If we're going to do this, we should at least be on a first-name basis. From his corner, Jasper spoke, his voice small but clear. I liked her stories. Both adults turned to look at him. The boy hadn't moved from his spot, but he was looking directly at them now, not hiding, not retreating. She didn't talk to me like I'm stupid. Jasper's hands twisted together. She talked to me like I matter. The simple statement landed like a blow. Harrison's face went pale. Sienna felt tears prick her eyes. You do matter. Harrison's voice broke. Jasper, you matter more than anything in the world. Then why are you always gone? The words came out barely above a whisper. Why don't you ever play with me anymore? Why don't you? The boy's voice caught. Why don't you love me like you loved Mom? The question shattered something in the room. Harrison crossed to his son in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside the blocks, pulling Jasper into his arms. I love you so much. Harrison's voice was thick. God, Jasper, I love you so much it terrifies me. I'm so sorry I made you doubt that. I'm so sorry. Jasper didn't hug back, but he didn't pull away either. He just stood rigid in his father's embrace, tears streaming down his face. Sienna looked away, giving them privacy, stared out the window at the city below, thought about Ruby, about Daniel, about the ways grief made people strangers to themselves and each other. Miss Hayes. Harrison's voice made her turn back. He was still kneeling by Jasper, but looking at her. Please, I know I'm asking too much. I know this is irregular and possibly inappropriate, and definitely outside any normal bounds. But please, help us. The raw need in his voice, the trust it took to be that vulnerable in front of a stranger. Sienna saw past the billionaire to the broken father underneath. I have conditions. She heard herself say it before she'd consciously decided. Name them. First. Sienna counted on her fingers. My daughter comes with me. I won't uproot her life or leave her behind for this. Agreed. Bring her. Jasper could benefit from a friend his age. Second, we keep our apartment for the first month. We'll stay with you during the week if that's what's needed, but we go home on weekends. I need to know we have somewhere to return to if this doesn't work. Reasonable. Third, Sienna moved closer, looked Harrison directly in the eyes. You have to be present too. I won't be a replacement parent. Whatever time I spend with Jasper, you match it. You show up. You engage. You do the hard work of being his father, not just his provider. Harrison stood slowly, held her gaze. Those are fair conditions. And fourth, Sienna glanced at Jasper. I need to know everything about his mother's death, about the kidnapping attempt I read about online, about why he stopped speaking. If I'm going to help him, I need the whole truth. The muscle in Harrison's jaw tightened. Some of that is difficult to discuss. I'm sure it is. But I won't walk into this blind. Jasper deserves better than another adult who doesn't understand his trauma. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. You're right. You'll have the truth. All of it. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Sienna looked at his outstretched hand, at Jasper watching them with cautious hope, at the city sprawling beyond the windows, at the precipice she was about to step off. She thought of Ruby asking if the sad boy was okay, thought of Daniel, who'd always said the best decisions were the ones that scared you, thought of her own loneliness these past 5 years, and the unexpected pull she felt toward this broken little family. 1 month trial. She shook Harrison's hand. After that, we reassess. 1 month. Harrison's grip was warm, steady. Patricia will draw up the paperwork. When can I start? Is Monday too soon? I'd like Jasper to have this weekend to adjust to the idea, to look forward to something. Monday works. Sienna released his hand. I'll need to arrange things with my daughter. Explain this in a way a 7-year-old can understand. Bring her by this weekend if you'd like. Harrison glanced at Jasper. Let the children meet before the formal arrangement begins. That's actually a good idea. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, two strangers who'd just agreed to something neither fully understood. Then Jasper walked over, held out one of his electronic building blocks to Sienna. For your daughter. His voice was soft, shy. It's a prototype. Dad's company makes them. The gesture, so thoughtful and vulnerable, made Sienna's throat tight. Thank you, Jasper. That's very kind. Ruby will love it. What's her name again? Jasper asked. Ruby, like the gemstone. Is she nice? She's the nicest person I know. Sienna smiled. And she's really good at playing games and making up stories. I think you two will get along. I hope so. Jasper looked down at his feet. I don't have very many friends. Well, Sienna knelt so they were eye level. That's about to change. When Patricia called for a car to take her home, Sienna felt like she was floating. The whole morning had the surreal quality of a dream. Had she really just agreed to move herself and Ruby into a billionaire's home? To help a traumatized child speak again? To be part of Harrison Caldwell's life in ways she couldn't even fully define? The car ride back to Queens gave her time to process, to panic slightly, to wonder what the hell she'd just committed to. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. Number unlisted, but she recognized the direct, efficient tone. Patricia will send over the formal agreement this afternoon. Thank you, Sienna. You've given me something I haven't felt in 3 years. Hope. She stared at the message, at her name without the MS Hayes formality, at the vulnerability in those final words. Before she could overthink it, she typed back, Don't thank me yet. The hard part comes next, making this actually work. His response came immediately. Then it's fortunate I'm good at difficult things. Despite everything, Sienna smiled. We'll see about that. That evening, she sat Ruby down for what she'd been mentally calling the conversation. They curled together on the couch with hot chocolate, Ruby's favorite stuffed elephant tucked between them. Baby, I need to talk to you about something important. Ruby's eyes went wide. Are we moving? Did someone die? Are you sick? No, nothing like that. Sienna pulled her close. Remember I told you about the sad boy I met at work? The one whose mom died? Ruby nodded solemnly. Well, his dad asked me to spend time with him, to help him feel less sad. And that means we might need to stay at their house sometimes during the week. Like a sleepover? Sort of. Sienna tried to find words a 7-year-old could grasp. More like we'd have 2 homes for a while. Our apartment on weekends, and their place during the week. You'd still go to your same school. Still see all your friends, but you'd also get to know Jasper. That's the boy's name. Ruby processed this with the seriousness she brought to all big topics. Would we have our own room? Our own rooms. Plural. Sienna still couldn't quite believe it herself. The place is really big, Ruby. Like, really big. Like a castle? Kind of. Ruby's eyes lit up. Then her expression turned thoughtful. But why does he need you? Doesn't he have a mom? His mom died, like how Daddy died. So now it's just him and his dad, like it's just you and me. Understanding dawned on Ruby's face. So, he's lonely, very lonely, and his dad works a lot, kind of like how I have to work a lot. So I'm going to try to help make things better for him, by being his friend, by being there for him. Sienna corrected gently. Sometimes, that's the most important thing we can do for people who are sad. Ruby leaned against her mother's shoulder. Okay, we can help him. But Mama, yes baby, are you going to fall in love with his dad? Because Darius says rich men always make ladies fall in love with them. Sienna choked on her hot chocolate. What? No, Ruby, this is about helping a child. That's not what this is. Okay. Ruby sounded unconvinced. But if you do fall in love, that's okay. Daddy would want you to be happy. The simple statement, delivered with such earnest certainty, made Sienna's eyes sting. How did you get so wise? I'm 7 3/4. Ruby said it like it explained everything. And I pay attention. That weekend, Sienna brought Ruby to meet Jasper. Harrison sent a car again, which Ruby found thrilling. She pressed her face to the window the entire ride, narrating the changing neighborhoods. Look, Mama, that building is taller than the sky. Look at those dogs, they're so fluffy. Mama, are we rich now? No, baby. Sienna smoothed Ruby's curls. We're just visiting someone who is. But if we live there sometimes, doesn't that make us a little bit rich? The logic was hard to argue with. They arrived at the Caldwell penthouse on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The building's doorman greeted them by name. The elevator required a keycard that Harrison had sent over. Everything spoke of wealth and security, and a world so far removed from their own it might as well have been another planet. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and there, waiting in the entrance hall, stood Harrison and Jasper. Harrison had traded his business suit for jeans and a sweater. The casual clothes made him look younger, more approachable. Jasper stood slightly behind his father, peering around at them with curious eyes. Ms. Hayes, Harrison smiled. And you must be Ruby. Ruby, surprisingly shy for once, tucked herself against Sienna's side. Hi. Jasper's voice was soft. I'm Jasper. I know. Ruby whispered back. My mom said you like stars. I do. Me too. Ruby's shyness was already fading. Do you know the constellations? I know 3. The Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and Orion. Orion. Jasper's lips quirked. I know that one too. Can you show me? Do you have a telescope? I have a telescope and a planetarium projector. Jasper glanced at his father, then back at Ruby. Want to see? Yes, and just like that, the children were bonding. Harrison led them to what he called Jasper's wing, which turned out to be an entire floor dedicated to the boys' bedroom, playroom, and study. Ruby's reaction was priceless. She stopped in the doorway of the playroom and gasped. It's like a toy store. It sort of is, Jasper admitted. Dad keeps buying me things. Harrison had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. While the children explored, Harrison and Sienna stood in the hallway. The sounds of Ruby's excitement and Jasper's quiet responses drifted through the open door. She's wonderful, Harrison said softly. So open. Jasper hasn't interacted with another child in months. She has a gift for making friends. Sienna watched her daughter showing Jasper how to make a stuffed elephant dance. She gets that from her father. He could talk to anyone. It was the first time she'd mentioned Daniel to Harrison. The words felt strange. Vulnerable. Your late husband. Harrison's tone was careful. What was his name? Daniel. Daniel Hayes. Something flickered across Harrison's face. An expression Sienna couldn't quite read. That's a good, strong name, Harrison said finally. He was a good, strong man. Sienna kept her eyes on the children. He died when Ruby was 2. Car accident. Fell asleep at the wheel driving home from work. I'm sorry. Harrison's voice carried genuine sympathy. Losing a partner. It changes everything, doesn't it? Everything, Sienna agreed. You keep waiting for life to go back to normal, and then you realize this is normal now. The absence is the constant. Yes, Harrison's voice was rough. Exactly that. They stood in shared understanding. Two people shaped by loss. Two people trying to build something from the wreckage. Your daughter seems to be adjusting well, Harrison observed. She's resilient. Sienna smiled sadly. More resilient than she should have to be. Children usually are. They bend when we break. The observation felt weighted with personal experience. Inside the playroom, Ruby and Jasper had moved on to building something with electronic blocks. Jasper was explaining how the pieces connected, his voice growing stronger as he talked. Ruby listened with rapt attention, asking questions that made him light up. "They're good for each other," Harrison said quietly. "They are," Sienna agreed. Then, because vulnerability deserved vulnerability. "Thank you for this, for giving Ruby a chance to just be a kid in a magical playroom. We don't. Our life doesn't usually include things like this." Harrison turned to look at her. His expression was intense, serious. "Sienna, I want you to understand something. This arrangement, it benefits me far more than it benefits you. You're giving me hope that my son might heal. That's priceless. So if Ruby wants to play here every day, if she wants her own telescope and planetarium projector, if there's anything I can provide that brings her joy, please let me." The offer was generous, too generous. It made Sienna uncomfortable in ways she couldn't fully articulate. "I appreciate that." She chose her words carefully. "But I don't want Ruby getting used to things we can't sustain. When this month is over, if it doesn't work out, we go back to our regular lives. I can't have her heartbroken over losing access to all of this." Was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if it does work out? Then we'll figure it out as we go." Sienna met his eyes. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves." Fair enough. They spent 3 hours at the penthouse that afternoon. The children played, while Sienna and Harrison discussed logistics. Where Ruby and Sienna would stay, schedules, boundaries, the practicalities that would make this experiment possible. Patricia had prepared a suite for them in what Harrison called the East Wing. 3 bedrooms connected by a common living area. Ruby's room had been decorated in purples and pinks, with a bookshelf already stocked with age-appropriate books. You didn't have to do all this. Sienna stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. I wanted Ruby to feel welcome. Harrison stood beside her. This is her home now, too. For the next month, at least. Her home, the words felt foreign. This place, with its soaring ceilings and original artwork and views that stretched for miles. When it was time to leave, Ruby hugged Jasper goodbye. A spontaneous, fierce embrace that made the boy freeze for a moment before tentatively hugging back. "I'll see you Monday," Ruby promised. "And we're going to find all the constellations. Every single one." "Okay," Jasper whispered. "I'd like that." In the car ride home, Ruby chattered non-stop about the playroom and Jasper and the planetarium projector that made it look like you were in space. "Mama, can we live there forever? We're trying it for 1 month, baby. Remember? Then we'll see. But what if I want to see Jasper after the month? Then we'll figure something out." Sienna pulled her daughter close. "But don't get too attached to the fancy stuff, okay? That's not what matters." "I know," Ruby said seriously. "What matters is that Jasper has a friend now, and that we're helping him not be so sad." "Exactly. And that you and his dad keep looking at each other like you're in a movie." Sienna sputtered. "We do not." "You do." Ruby giggled. "It's okay, Mama. I don't mind. There's nothing to mind because there's nothing happening. If you say so." Sienna decided to let it drop. Her 7-year-old was entirely too perceptive. That night, after Ruby was asleep, Sienna's phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. "Jasper hasn't stopped talking about Ruby. I haven't heard him this animated in years. Thank you." She smiled despite herself and typed back, "Ruby's the same way. I think we made the right choice." His response came quickly. "I hope so. See you Monday, Sienna." "See you Monday, Harrison." She stared at the exchange, at the easy use of first names, at the warmth in the simple words. What was she getting herself into? But somewhere beneath the anxiety and uncertainty, there was something else. Something that felt almost like excitement, like the first breath after being underwater too long. Maybe, just maybe, this impossible arrangement would turn into something good. Or maybe it would fall apart spectacularly and leave everyone more broken than before. Only one way to find out. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of activity, packing clothes for the week, making sure Ruby had everything she needed for school. The butterflies in Sienna's stomach that wouldn't settle. The car arrived at 8. Same driver, same smooth professionalism. Ruby bounced in her seat the entire ride, too excited to sit still. When they arrived at the penthouse, Harrison was waiting. He'd clearly already been up for hours. There was coffee in an expensive-looking mug and the slightly rumpled look of someone who'd been working since dawn. "Good morning." He smiled at Ruby. "I hope you're ready for an adventure." "I'm always ready for adventures," Ruby declared. Jasper appeared from the hallway, dressed for school. When he saw Ruby, his whole face lit up. "You came." "Of course I came." Ruby bounced over to him. "I promised, didn't I?" And just like that, the strangeness of the situation faded slightly, because at the center of it were two children who'd found each other. Everything else was just details. Harrison's driver would take both children to school. Sienna would have the mornings to herself until pickup at 3. Harrison offered her an office space in the penthouse if she wanted to work on anything, or access to the building's gym, library, whatever she needed. It was all overwhelming in its generosity. The first day passed in a blur. Sienna wandered the penthouse, feeling like an intruder, made herself lunch in the enormous kitchen, tried to read, but couldn't focus. At 3 o'clock, she picked up both children from their respective schools. Ruby's was in Queens, Jasper's a private academy in Manhattan. The driver handled the logistics with practiced efficiency. "How was school?" Sienna asked as they settled into the car. "Good," Ruby enthused. "I told everyone about Jasper and the telescope." "And what did you tell them?" Harrison asked. He'd surprised them by joining for the pickup. "That I have a new friend who knows everything about stars," Ruby grinned, "and that we're staying at his house for a while." Jasper, who'd been quiet until then, spoke up. "I told my teacher too." "What did you tell her?" "That I have a friend now." His voice was soft, proud. She was surprised. "I don't usually talk to her." Harrison's expression flickered with emotion. "That's wonderful, Jasper." The afternoon routine they'd discussed began to take shape. Homework at the kitchen table. Playtime. Dinner. Together. It was normal and surreal all at once. This domestic scene playing out in a penthouse that cost more than Sienna would earn in a lifetime. But the children didn't care about that. They cared that Ruby helped Jasper with his spelling words, that Jasper showed Ruby how to build a robot with his electronic blocks, that they laughed together over a joke only they understood. And Harrison. Harrison watched it all with an expression that broke Sienna's heart. Wonder and grief and guilt all tangled together. After dinner, after the children were settled with a movie, Harrison found Sienna on the balcony overlooking Central Park. "Penny, for your thoughts." She turned to find him holding 2 glasses of wine. "Offering one. I probably shouldn't." Sienna hedged. "I'm technically working. You're technically off duty once the kids are settled." Harrison pressed the glass into her hand. "And I could use the company." They stood side by side, looking out at the city lights. "This is strange, isn't it?" Sienna said finally. "All of this. Incredibly strange." Harrison agreed, but also, right somehow. She glanced at him. His profile against the cityscape. The tension in his shoulders that never quite left. "Can I ask you something?" She took a sip of wine for courage. "Anything. Do you ever regret it? Building all of this? The company, the wealth, the everything? Do you ever wish you'd chosen differently?" Harrison was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Every day. Every single day I wish I'd worked less and been present more. Wish I'd listened when Catherine said I was missing Jasper's childhood. Wish I'd—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I'd give it all away. Every dollar. Every building with my name on it. If I could go back and just be there. But you can't go back, Sienna said gently. None of us can. No. We can only go forward. Harrison turned to look at her and hope we do better. Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them. Understanding, connection. The recognition of two people who'd both learned that loss was the price of loving. Harrison broke the moment first, looking back out at the city. Thank you for being here, Sienna. I know it's complicated and strange and probably more than you signed up for. It is all of those things, she agreed. But I meant what I told Ruby. Sometimes helping someone who's hurting is the most important thing we can do, even when it costs us something, especially then. They stood in comfortable silence as the city glittered below. Two strangers becoming something more, something neither of them had expected, and neither of them could have known that in just a few weeks, everything would change, that secrets would surface and danger would strike, and the fragile family they were building would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. There was possibility. There was the sound of children laughing in the background, and the warmth of connection neither had felt in years. For now, that was enough. Now, before we continue this journey, if you're invested in seeing where this goes, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will shake everything they think they know, and you won't want to miss a single moment. The first week passed in a rhythm that felt both strange and natural. Mornings of getting both children ready for school, afternoons of homework and play, evenings when Harrison would join them for dinner, initially awkward and stiff, but gradually relaxing into something that almost resembled family. Sienna watched him learn to be present, watched him put his phone away during meals, watched him sit on the floor and build ridiculous robot contraptions with Jasper and Ruby, watched the walls he'd built around himself start to crack. On Thursday evening, after the children were in bed, Harrison asked Sienna to join him in his office. There's something I need to tell you. His expression was serious, guarded, something I should have mentioned from the beginning, but I was afraid it would complicate things. Sienna's stomach tightened. Okay. Harrison gestured to the chair across from his desk, more formal than their usual interactions. Whatever this was, it was important. When I first saw your name at the restaurant, Harrison began, when you introduced yourself as Sienna Hayes, I thought it might be a coincidence, but after you left, I had Patricia run a background check. Of course you did. Sienna tried to keep the edge from her voice. I had to, for Jasper's safety. You understand. Harrison ran a hand through his hair. But what I found, Sienna, your late husband, what was his full name? Daniel Christopher Hayes. Why? Harrison pulled a file from his desk drawer, placed it between them. And what did he do for a living? He worked for a pharmaceutical company. Research and development. He was always vague about the details. Confidentiality agreements and such. Sienna's pulse quickened. Harrison, what is this about? Daniel Hayes worked for me. The words hung in the air. Sienna stared at him, certain she'd misheard. That's impossible. Daniel worked for a startup called, she tried to remember the name, BioNova Solutions, some small company. Not a subsidiary of Caldwell Industries. Harrison opened the file, pushed it toward her. I owned BioNova through a holding company. Your husband was my director of research and development 6 years ago. Sienna's hands shook as she opened the file. And there it was, employment records with Daniel's name, his signature, photos from company events showing him in a lab coat with the Caldwell Industries logo visible in the background. I don't understand. Her voice sounded far away. He never said your name. The subsidiary structure was deliberately opaque, for competitive reasons. Most employees didn't realize the full ownership chain. Harrison leaned forward. Sienna, I need you to understand. When I saw your name at the restaurant, I didn't make the connection immediately. But when I researched you afterward, when I saw your daughter's age, the timeline of Daniel's death, I realized who you were. The room tilted. You knew. When you offered me this position, you knew I was Daniel's widow. Yes. Anger flared hot and bright in Sienna's chest. So, what is this? Guilt? You're trying to ease your conscience by helping Daniel's poor widow and orphan daughter? No. Harrison's voice was firm. What happened at the restaurant with Jasper, that was real. His response to you was genuine, but I would be lying if I said knowing who you were didn't factor into my decision to pursue this arrangement. Why? What does my dead husband have to do with your son? Because Daniel's death haunts me. Harrison's composure cracked. Because he was more than an employee. He was a friend, and the night he died, he was driving home from the lab at 3 a.m. Because I had pushed an impossible deadline for a project that couldn't wait. Sienna's breath caught. Your husband died because I prioritized profit over people. Because I demanded he work around the clock on research that was going to make me billions. Because I was so focused on beating our competitors to market that I didn't care who I crushed in the process. Harrison's voice turned rough. Daniel fell asleep at the wheel because he'd been working 30-hour shifts for weeks. Because I had created a culture where saying no wasn't an option. Because I killed him just as surely as if I'd been driving that car. The confession poured out of him, raw, unfiltered. Years of guilt finally finding voice. Sienna stood abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. I need air. She walked out onto the balcony. The same balcony where Harrison's wife had died, where grief seemed to cling to the very stones. Behind her, she heard Harrison follow. But he kept his distance. I'm sorry. His voice was quiet. I should have told you from the beginning. I should have. Should have what? Sienna whirled to face him. Should have told me you were responsible for my husband's death? Should have mentioned that this whole arrangement is built on your guilt? Should have. Her voice broke. She pressed her hands to her face. Daniel loved his work, she said finally. He came home exhausted, but excited, talking about breakthroughs and possibilities and how they were going to help people. He believed in what he was doing. He was brilliant, Harrison said softly. One of the best researchers I've ever employed. The work he did on pain management protocols. It saved lives, Sienna. Thousands of lives. But it cost his own. Yes. Harrison didn't flinch from the truth. It cost his own, and I have to live with that. They stood in the darkness. The city lights blurred through Sienna's tears. I don't know what to do with this information, she said finally. I don't know if I can stay here knowing. I understand if you want to leave. Harrison's voice was carefully controlled. I'll honor our agreement regardless. The trust for Ruby's education, everything I promised. But if you can't, if this is too much. Sienna thought about Jasper, about the light that had come back into his eyes this past week, about Ruby's joy at having a friend, about the 4 of them around the dinner table, laughing at one of Ruby's silly jokes, about Harrison's genuine effort to show up, to be present, to do better. Did you plan this? She asked, meeting me at the restaurant. Was any of it real? I swear to you, I had no idea you worked there. Harrison moved closer. Not until you told me your name. And even then, I didn't fully connect the dots until later. What happened with Jasper, that was completely genuine. And afterward, when you realized who I was, I saw an opportunity to try to make amends, to help Daniel's family the way I failed to help him. Harrison's voice dropped. But Sienna, what's developed this week? The way you've connected with Jasper, the way you've started to feel like part of something, that's real too. At least it is for me. Sienna wanted to stay angry, wanted to pack up Ruby and leave and never look back. But she thought about Daniel, about what he would want. Daniel always said you were brilliant but distant, she said quietly. That you cared more about results than people. That you were building something important, but losing yourself in the process. He wasn't wrong, but he also said, Sienna's voice caught, he also said that when your wife died, something broke in you, that you weren't the same after, that grief had hollowed you out. Harrison's breath hitched. I think, Sienna turned to face him fully. I think you've been trying to bury your guilt and grief under work for 3 years, just like I've been trying to bury mine under survival. And maybe we found each other because we both needed to stop running. Harrison's eyes were wet. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not offering forgiveness. Not yet. Sienna's voice was firm. But I'm offering continuation. We keep going. We see this through, for the children, and maybe for ourselves too. You're staying? I'm staying. For now. But Harrison, no more secrets. If there's anything else I need to know, anything about Daniel's death, or your wife, or why Jasper really stopped speaking, I need the whole truth. You'll have it. Harrison's voice was thick with emotion. All of it. I promise. They stood facing each other on the balcony, where Catherine had died, where secrets and grief had festered for years. And something shifted between them. An understanding that healing couldn't happen without honesty, that moving forward meant confronting the past. Tell me about the night he died, Sienna said quietly. Tell me everything. So Harrison did. He told her about the Nexaprol project Daniel had been leading, about the pressure from investors to get the drug to market, about the impossible timeline he'd set, about the last conversation he'd had with Daniel, where the exhausted researcher had asked for more time and Harrison had said no, about getting the call at 4 a.m. that Daniel had crashed his car into a barrier on the highway, about the guilt that had consumed him, about the private investigators he'd hired to look into the accident. Convinced there had to be something more than simple exhaustion. And there was something more. Harrison's voice turned grim. The toxicology report showed elevated levels of a stimulant. One of our own products, actually. A medication for narcolepsy that Daniel shouldn't have had access to in those quantities. What are you saying? I'm saying the investigation was closed too quickly. That there were questions that deserved answers but never got them. Harrison pulled out his phone, showed her files he'd kept. Daniel had scheduled a meeting with me for the morning after his death. My assistant said he sounded anxious, urgent, like he'd discovered something important. Discovered what? I don't know. His research files were corrupted the night he died. His backup drives disappeared from his office. Harrison's expression was haunted. I've spent 5 years wondering if his death was really an accident, or if he found something someone wanted buried. The implication sent ice through Sienna's veins. You think someone killed him? I think it's possible. I think he discovered something about Nexaprol, something that could have destroyed the company. And I think I was too broken by Catherine's death to push harder for answers. Catherine's death. Sienna's mind raced. You said she died in a plane crash. That's what the official report says. Harrison's jaw clenched. But Catherine had been asking questions too, about the company, about certain financial irregularities she'd noticed. She died 6 months before Daniel, and sometimes I wonder if they're connected. Yes, the weight of what he was suggesting pressed down on them both. Why are you telling me this now? Sienna asked. Because you asked for truth. Harrison met her eyes. And because, if there's even a chance that someone killed Daniel, killed Catherine, you deserve to know what you might be walking into by staying here. Are we in danger? Sienna thought of Ruby asleep upstairs. I don't know. I have no proof. Just suspicions and questions that have haunted me for years. Harrison's voice turned fierce. But I have the best security money can buy, and I will protect you and Ruby and Jasper with my life if necessary. Sienna should have run, should have grabbed her daughter and disappeared into the night. But instead, she found herself asking, who do you suspect? My former head of security, Gerald Thorne. He resigned 2 weeks after Daniel's death and moved to the Cayman Islands. My CFO at the time, Richard Sterling. He took early retirement right after and now consults for our biggest competitor. And, Harrison hesitated, my late wife's brother, Vincent Ashford. He sat on our board, pushed hard to have me removed after Catherine died, has been trying to gain control of the company ever since. You think your brother-in-law killed his own sister? I think Vincent loved money more than anything, including family. And if Catherine threatened that, Harrison didn't finish the sentence. They stood in heavy silence. The city continued its indifferent glitter below. I need time to process this, Sienna said finally. All of it. The Daniel connection. The conspiracy theories. Everything. Of course. Harrison stepped back. Take all the time you need. But as Sienna turned to go inside, his voice stopped her. Sienna, for what it's worth, having you here, having life return to this house. He searched for words. It's been the first time in 3 years I've felt like I might survive this, like there might be something beyond grief and guilt. The vulnerability in his admission made her throat tight. Good night, Harrison. Good night. Sienna didn't sleep that night. She lay in her luxurious bedroom in the East Wing and stared at the ceiling and thought about Daniel, about the husband she'd lost, about the possibility that his death hadn't been an accident, about Harrison Caldwell, who was either a guilt-ridden billionaire trying to make amends or something more complicated, something that scared her because she was starting to care. Her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A text from Darius. "How's life in the castle?" "You surviving?" she typed back. "It's complicated. Found out my late husband used to work for Harrison. He feels responsible for Daniel's death." The response came immediately. "What? Girl, call me. Now." They talked for an hour. Sienna poured out everything. The revelations, the suspicions, the impossible situation she'd found herself in. "So let me get this straight." Darius's voice was incredulous. "You're living with a billionaire who might be investigating a conspiracy that killed his wife and your husband, and you're staying? The kids need stability. That's not the only reason." Sienna was quiet. "You're falling for him." Darius said it gently. "Oh, honey, I'm not. I barely know him." "You're living in his house, raising kids together, sharing secrets at 2 a.m. That's intimacy, Sienna. That's the foundation of something real." "It's complicated. The best things usually are." Darius sighed. "Just be careful, okay? Guard your heart. Guard Ruby. Don't let the money and the penthouse and the broken billionaire make you forget who you are." "I won't." But as she hung up, Sienna wondered if it was already too late. The next morning brought chaos neither of them had anticipated. Sienna woke to her phone ringing. Harrison's name on the screen. It was barely 6 a.m. "Don't go outside." His voice was tense. "Don't let Ruby leave the penthouse." "What? Why?" "Just stay inside. I'm handling it." She went to the window, looked down at the street below, and her stomach dropped. Paparazzi, at least 24 of them. Cameras with long lenses pointed at the building. News vans parked along the street. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Google alerts with her name. She clicked one with trembling fingers. The headline made her blood run cold. "Mystery woman moves into Caldwell penthouse. Billionaire's new love or hired help?" There were photos of her and Ruby getting into Harrison's car, of them entering the building, close-ups of her face that must have been taken with telephoto lenses. The article speculated wildly. Was she Harrison's new girlfriend? A nanny? How had a waitress from Queens caught the reclusive billionaire's attention? What did this mean for Caldwell Industries? Harrison appeared at her door minutes later, fully dressed despite the early hour. His expression grim. "I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. How did they find out?" He pulled up his phone, showed her a gossip blog post from the previous night. The source was listed as anonymous, but the details were too specific to be coincidence. Someone talked. Harrison's jaw was tight. Someone who knew about our arrangement. Who? I have suspicions, but right now, the priority is damage control. I've had Patricia draft a statement clarifying your role. But Sienna. He met her eyes. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to dig into your background, your finances, your entire life. Ruby. Sienna's voice broke. She can't go to school with photographers following her. I've already called both schools. The children will do remote learning today, and I'm doubling security. This is insane. Sienna pressed her hands to her temples. We're not even. There's nothing happening between us. Why do they care? Because I'm wealthy and reclusive and haven't been photographed with a woman since Catherine died. Harrison's expression was bitter. And because you're beautiful and mysterious and the narrative of billionaire falls for working class woman sells papers. Don't. Sienna held up a hand. Don't make this about narratives. This is about my daughter's privacy. Her safety. You're right. I'm sorry. Harrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and cursed. It's getting worse. They found your apartment in Queens. There are photographers there too. What? I'm sending security to your building. And Sienna. He hesitated. I think you should stay here full time, not just during the week. It's not safe for you to go back and forth with this kind of media attention. You want us to move in permanently? Just until this dies down. Harrison's voice was urgent. Please, I can protect you here. Out there, with cameras following you. I can't guarantee your safety. Or Ruby's. Sienna wanted to argue, wanted to insist on maintaining their boundaries. But she thought of Ruby being chased by photographers, of strangers knowing where they lived. Okay, she heard herself agree, but this doesn't change our agreement. 1 month trial. This is just logistics. Of course, just logistics, but they both knew it was more than that. Knew that every day under the same roof, every shared meal, every moment of crisis managed, together was binding them in ways that had nothing to do with employment agreements. By noon, the story had exploded across every gossip site and tabloid. Harrison's publicist was doing damage control. The board of Caldwell Industries was demanding explanations. Investors were nervous. And through it all, 2 children sat in the playroom, blissfully unaware of the chaos. Building robots and finding constellations and being friends. Sienna stood in the doorway watching them. Ruby was showing Jasper how to make a paper airplane. Jasper was actually smiling, laughing. This is worth it. Harrison's voice came from behind her. Whatever happens, seeing him like this, it's worth it. Is it? Sienna didn't turn around. Is it worth Ruby's face being all over the internet? Worth strangers speculating about our lives? Yes. Harrison moved to stand beside her. Because the alternative is going back to how things were. Jasper silent and alone. You struggling to make ends meet, both of us drowning in grief with no lifeline. This, us here together. It's messy and complicated, but it's also life, real life. Sienna wanted to stay angry, but watching their children laugh together, she couldn't. No more secrets, she said finally, and no more surprises. If we're going to survive this, we have to be completely honest with each other. Agreed. That means, if there's anything else, about Daniel, about Catherine, about whatever conspiracy you think might have gotten them killed, I need to know. You will. Harrison's voice was solemn. I promise. But promises, as Sienna was about to learn, were easy to make and hard to keep. Because the secrets surrounding Daniel's death and Catherine's accident ran deeper than either of them imagined. And the people who wanted those secrets buried were watching, waiting, and planning their next move. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, wondering what happens next, show some love. Hit that like button. Drop a comment saying I'm with you, Dr. Phillips, or tell me where you're watching from. Because part 2 is going to take this story to places you cannot imagine. And you're going to want to be here for every single moment. This is just the beginning. The truth about Daniel's death, the conspiracy that spans years, the danger that's about to find them. It's all coming, and it's going to change everything these 4 people think they know about family, love, and the price of truth. The media storm lasted exactly 4 days before a celebrity divorce scandal stole the headlines. But the damage was done. Sienna's face had been plastered across tabloids. Her entire life history dissected by strangers online. Well-meaning friends from her past reaching out with questions she couldn't answer. And through it all, Harrison kept his word. Security was tripled. A legal team handled the worst of the invasive journalism. Patricia issued statements that were professional and final. But the biggest change was the one neither of them had anticipated. Somewhere between crisis management and late-night strategy sessions, between shared meals and co-parenting. Moments, the boundaries between employer and employee had blurred into something neither could name. It was Ruby who noticed first. Mama, she whispered one evening as Sienna tucked her into bed. Do you like Harrison? He's a good man. Sienna smoothed her daughter's curls. Why do you ask? Because you smile different when he's around. Ruby's 7-year-old wisdom was unsettling. Like you're happy, but also scared. I'm not scared. You are. It's okay though. Ruby patted her mother's hand. Daddy would want you to be happy, even if being happy is scary. The simple statement made Sienna's eyes burn. How did you get so wise, baby? I pay attention. Ruby yawned. And I think Harrison likes you too. He looks at you the way the prince looks at the princess in my books. This isn't a fairy tale, Ruby. Maybe not, but it could be something good, right? Sienna kissed her daughter's forehead. Get some sleep, sweetheart. But as she left the room, Ruby's words echoed. It could be something good, could it? She found Harrison in his office. He'd been working late every night since the media explosion, trying to reassure investors, manage the board, keep Caldwell Industries stable while his personal life imploded. You should sleep. Sienna stood in the doorway. Harrison looked up from his computer, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. So should you. Can't. Too much in my head. Join the club. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Want to talk about it? Sienna sat, studied him in the soft light of the desk lamp. When was the last time you slept through the night? 3 years ago, before Catherine died. Harrison's answer was immediate, honest. You? 5 years. Since Daniel. They shared a look of mutual understanding. Two insomniacs bound by loss. I've been thinking. Harrison closed his laptop. About what you said. About no more secrets. Okay. There's more to Catherine's death than I told you. Harrison's voice was careful. Things I've kept locked away because admitting them out loud makes them real. I'm listening. So Harrison told her about the arguments he and Catherine had been having before she died, about her suspicions that something was wrong at the company, about financial discrepancies she'd discovered, about her brother Vincent's involvement in deals that didn't add up, about the night she died. We fought. Harrison's voice went hollow. She wanted to go to the authorities with what she'd found. I told her she was being paranoid, that Vincent was family, that she was seeing conspiracy where there was just business complexity, and then she went out on the balcony, to cool off, to get away from me. Harrison stood, walked to the window. I was in my office, taking a call I thought was more important, and when I came out, she was gone, fallen. The investigators ruled it an accident, said she'd been drinking, lost her balance. But you don't think it was an accident? Catherine barely drank. And the railing she supposedly fell over, it was waist height. Solid. You'd have to actively climb it or be pushed. Harrison turned to face her. I've relived that night 1,000 times. And I keep coming back to one detail. Vincent was here that evening, in the penthouse. He and Catherine had been arguing about something. He left maybe 20 minutes before she fell. You think your brother-in-law pushed his own sister off a balcony? I think it's possible. I think Catherine discovered something that threatened him, something worth killing for. Harrison's hands clenched, and I think I was too arrogant and too distracted to see it until it was too late. Did you tell the police? I had private investigators look into it. They found irregularities, but nothing concrete enough to reopen the case. And Harrison's voice cracked. I couldn't face it, couldn't admit that my wife might have been murdered while I was 10 feet away taking a business call. The pain in his admission was visceral. Sienna crossed to him without thinking, placed a hand on his arm. If she was murdered, that's not your fault, isn't it? I ignored her concerns, dismissed her fears, chose work over listening to her. If I had just... His voice broke completely. And before Sienna could second-guess the impulse, she pulled him into a hug. Harrison stiffened for a moment, then collapsed into her embrace. His arms came around her, tight, desperate. They stood like that for a long time, two people carrying unbearable weight, finding momentary relief in shared burden. When they finally pulled apart, Harrison's eyes were wet. I'm sorry. He stepped back. That was inappropriate. It was human, Sienna corrected gently. You're allowed to grieve, Harrison. You're allowed to break sometimes. I can't afford to break. I have a son, a company, responsibilities. You have a son who needs to see that it's okay to feel, who needs to know that strength doesn't mean never falling apart. Sienna held his gaze. You've been performing invincibility for 3 years, and it's killing you. The truth of her words hung between them. Harrison's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He glanced at it and frowned. What is it? Patricia, there's been a development. He read the message, his expression darkening. Vincent Ashford just called an emergency board meeting. He's bringing a motion to remove me as CEO. Can he do that? If he has enough votes. And given the recent media attention, the stock volatility, he might. Harrison was already moving, pulling up files, making calls. I need to get ahead of this. What can I do? Take care of Jasper. Harrison's eyes met hers. Keep him safe. Keep him from knowing how bad this could get. Please. Sienna nodded. We'll be okay. You go do what you need to do. But as Harrison disappeared into crisis mode, Sienna couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected. The media leak. The board meeting. Vincent's power play. Someone was orchestrating this. And the question was, why now? What had changed? The answer came 3 days later. Sienna was checking the mail. A task she'd taken over to give herself something normal to do. Something that didn't involve security teams and crisis management. Among the usual bills and correspondence was a package, addressed to her. No return address, just her name typed on a plain label. Her hands trembled as she brought it to Harrison's office. He was on a video call with lawyers, strategizing for the board meeting scheduled for the following week. He saw her expression and ended the call immediately. What's wrong? Sienna placed the package on his desk. This came for me. Harrison's face went pale. Don't open it. He called security, had them scan it, x-ray it, test it for explosives or biological threats. It's clean. Nolan Bishop, the head of security, reported. Just a USB drive and a note. Open it, Harrison commanded. Inside was exactly what Nolan had described. A small USB drive and a handwritten note on plain paper. Sienna read it aloud, her voice shaking. Daniel tried to warn you. Now I am. Get out before you end up like Catherine, a friend. The words seemed to suck the air from the room. Who sent this? Sienna looked at Harrison. Who knows about Daniel's connection to me? To you? That information isn't public. Harrison's voice was tight. Only a few people knew Daniel worked for me, and fewer still would know about his concerns. Before he died, someone on the inside, Nolan said grimly, someone who knows enough to be dangerous. We need to see what's on that drive. Sienna reached for it. No. Harrison caught her hand. Not yet. It could be malware, a virus designed to compromise our systems, or bait to get us to incriminate ourselves somehow, or it could be evidence, Sienna countered. Evidence of whatever Daniel and Catherine discovered. Evidence that could prove they were murdered. It could also be a trap. Nolan interjected. Miss Hayes, someone sending you an anonymous warning isn't necessarily on your side. They could be trying to scare you, or lure you into doing something rash. I'll have my team analyze it in an isolated system. Harrison decided. If it's clean, we'll see what's on it. Until then, he looked at Sienna. I think you and Ruby should stay close to the penthouse. No unnecessary trips out. You think whoever sent this is a threat. I think we don't know enough to take chances. The wait for the security team to analyze the drive was agonizing. 3 days of watching Harrison become increasingly tense, of catching him staring at the USB drive like it was a bomb, of trying to keep things normal for the children while fear coiled tighter in her chest. Ruby sensed the change in atmosphere. She became clingy, had nightmares, asked repeatedly if they were going home soon. And Jasper started regressing, speaking less, watching Harrison with worried eyes. We're scaring them, Sienna told Harrison on the third night. Whatever is happening, they know something is wrong. Harrison looked at Jasper's closed bedroom door, then at Sienna. I don't know how to do this. How to keep them safe while also keeping them from being terrified. We tell them the truth. Appropriate truth. We say there's some grown-up stuff happening that we're handling, but that they're safe. That we've got this. Do we? Harrison's voice was raw. Have we got this? Because right now it feels like everything is falling apart. Hey. Sienna moved closer, forced him to look at her. You're not alone in this anymore. Whatever is on that drive, whatever Vincent is planning, whatever happens with the board meeting, we face it together. Why? Harrison searched her face. Why are you still here? You could take Ruby and disappear. Start over somewhere safe. Because, Sienna hesitated, then decided honesty was all she had left to offer. Because I care. About Jasper. About you. About this strange, broken family we've built. And I don't abandon people I care about. Something shifted in Harrison's expression. Vulnerability and hope and fear all tangled together. He breathed her name like a prayer. The moment stretched between them. Charged. Inevitable. Harrison's hand came up to cup her face, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she leaned into his touch instead, he closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like neither of them quite believed this was happening. Then it deepened, 3 years of loneliness pouring into connection, 5 years of grief transmuting into something that felt dangerously close to hope. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. This is complicated, Sienna whispered. Impossibly complicated. Harrison agreed. His forehead rested against hers. But also the most real thing I've felt in years. We can't. There's too much happening. The investigation, the board meeting. We need to focus. You're right. Harrison didn't move away. We absolutely should not be doing this. Definitely not. They kissed again. Deeper this time. Desperate. When Sienna finally pulled away, her heart was hammering. We have to stop. I know. I mean it, Harrison. We can't let this, whatever this is, we can't let it cloud our judgment. Not when there's so much at stake. You're absolutely right. Harrison stepped back. Put proper distance between them. I apologize. That was inappropriate given our arrangement. Our arrangement. Sienna almost laughed at the clinical term for what they'd become to each other. Right. Let's just focus on the drive, on keeping the kids safe, on getting through the next week. Agreed. But as Sienna left his office, she could still feel the ghost of his kiss on her lips. Could still feel the way her heart had leapt when he'd touched her. This was dangerous territory. Falling for Harrison Caldwell wasn't part of the plan. Couldn't be part of the plan. But her heart, apparently, hadn't gotten the memo. The security team's report came the next morning. The drive was clean. No malware, no viruses, just files. But what files? Harrison called Sienna to his office. Nolan was already there, his expression grim. You need to see this. Harrison pulled up the contents on his computer. What Sienna saw made her blood run cold. Emails, dozens of them, between Vincent Ashford, Gerald Thorne, and Richard Sterling, discussing the Catherine situation, the Hayes problem, neutralizing threats to Nexaprol, financial records showing payments to a private investigator who'd been tracking Catherine's movements in the weeks before her death, and most damning, Daniel's research notes, intact, complete, showing that Nexaprol, Caldwell Industries' most profitable drug, caused severe cardiac complications in a subset of patients. Complications the clinical trials had either missed or deliberately hidden. Oh my God. Sienna breathed. Daniel found proof that your drug was killing people, and Catherine must have discovered the cover-up. Harrison's voice was hollow. That's what they were arguing about. That's why Vincent killed her. Nolan finished. This is evidence of murder, conspiracy, corporate fraud on a massive scale. It's also enough to destroy Caldwell Industries. Harrison stared at the screen. To put me in prison if the board decides I knew about the cover-up. Did you? Sienna had to ask. No. Harrison met her eyes. I swear to you, I had no idea. But I was CEO. These trials happened under my watch. Legally, I'm responsible. We have to go to the authorities, Sienna said. With this evidence, they can prosecute Vincent, Gerald, everyone involved. and in the process, destroy the company, bankrupt the pension funds of thousands of employees, wipe out the medical research that's helping millions of patients. Harrison's expression was tortured. I built this company to help people. If I bring it down, the collateral damage will be catastrophic. But if you don't, you're complicit in covering up deaths. Sienna's voice was firm. Harrison, people died because of Nexaprol. More people could die if it stays on the market. You don't have a choice here. He knows, Nolan interjected. But Miss Hayes, you need to understand. The moment this goes public, everyone in this penthouse becomes a target. Vincent and his CO conspirators have already killed twice. They won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens them. So what do we do? Sienna looked between them. Hide this? Pretend we never saw it? No. Harrison's jaw set with determination. We go public. We expose everything. But we do it strategically, in a way that protects the innocent and puts the guilty behind bars. How? The board meeting is in 4 days, Nolan said. Vincent is planning to use the media scandal to push Harrison out. Replace him with someone he controls. Once he has that power, he'll bury this evidence permanently. So we beat him to it. Sienna's mind was racing. We release the evidence before the board meeting. Make it public. Remove Vincent's leverage. If we do that, there's no going back. Harrison warned. My reputation will be destroyed. The company will collapse. And Vincent will know we're the ones who exposed him. He'll come after us. Sienna finished the thought. Yes. They stood in heavy silence, the weight of the decision pressing down. I need to think, Harrison said finally. This affects too many people. I can't make this choice rashly. Harrison. Sienna moved closer. I know what Daniel would say. He'd say some things are more important than profit. That truth matters more than reputation. That doing the right thing is worth the cost. Even if the cost is everything, especially then. Harrison looked at her for a long moment, then at the evidence on his screen, then at Jasper's door down the hall. We protect the children first, he decided. Whatever we do, Jasper and Ruby's safety is the priority. Agreed? Agreed. Nolan. Harrison turned to his security chief. I need you to prepare contingency plans, worst-case scenarios. If Vincent comes after us, I want every possible exit strategy mapped out. Yes, sir. And Sienna. Harrison's voice softened. I need you to be ready to run. If this goes sideways, if we're in danger, you take Ruby and you disappear. New identities, new life, whatever it takes to keep her safe. I'm not leaving you and Jasper. You might have to. No. Sienna's voice was steel. We're in this together now. All 4 of us. We don't split up. We don't abandon each other. That's not how family works. The word hung in the air. Family. Is that what we are? Harrison asked quietly. I think we have been for a while now. We just haven't said it out loud. Harrison crossed to her, took her hands in his. Sienna Hayes, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few days, but I need you to know. Having you here, having you in my life, in Jasper's life, it's been, he struggled for words, it's been everything. Harrison, I'm falling in love with you. The confession spilled out of him. I know the timing is impossible. I know we're in the middle of a crisis. I know there are 1,000 reasons this is a terrible idea, but I can't pretend anymore. You've brought light back into this house, into my son's life, into my heart, and whatever happens next, I needed you to know. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. I'm falling too, and you're right. The timing is terrible. The situation is impossible, but, she cupped his face, but I'm tired of being afraid, tired of living half a life because I'm scared of losing people I love. So what do? We move forward, together. We expose the truth. We protect our children. We face whatever comes, and we do it as, she smiled through her tears, as family. Harrison kissed her, soft and deep and full of promise, and neither of them noticed Jasper's door opening slightly. The boy, peeking out, seeing his father kiss Sienna, seeing them hold each other, Jasper smiled, then quietly closed his door. Some things, he was learning, were worth the fear, worth the risk, worth believing in again. The next 2 days were a flurry of preparation. Harrison's legal team reviewing the evidence, journalists being carefully selected to receive the information, federal prosecutors being briefed, and through it all, life continued. Meals were made, children did homework, bedtime stories were read. It was surreal, this domestic normalcy playing out while they prepared to detonate a bomb that would change everything. On the evening before the planned release, Sienna found Harrison on the balcony. The same balcony where Catherine had died, where so many conversations had happened. Tomorrow, everything changes. She stood beside him. Yes. Are you ready? No. Harrison's honesty was refreshing. I'm terrified of what happens to the company, to my reputation, to... He glanced back at the penthouse. To all of this life we've built. It's been 3 weeks, Sienna observed. 3 weeks since I knelt beside your son in a restaurant. And somehow it feels like a lifetime, because it's been real. Every moment. Harrison turned to face her. Sienna, regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know, this hasn't been an arrangement for me. Not for a long time. For me either. After this is over, when the dust settles. Assuming we all survive. Harrison took her hand. I'd like to do this properly. Date you. Court you. Whatever the appropriate term is. I want to build something real with you. With our children. Our children. The phrase made Sienna's heart clench. When did Jasper become mine too? Probably around the same time Ruby became mine. Harrison smiled. They're a package deal now. We all are. Sienna leaned into him. Let her head rest on his shoulder. Tomorrow, we might lose everything. Not everything. Harrison's arm came around her. We have each other. We have the kids. We have the truth. That's more than either of us had 3 weeks ago. They stood together in the darkness, drawing strength from proximity, stealing peace before the storm. What neither of them knew was that the storm was about to break sooner than they'd planned, because Vincent Ashford had been watching, waiting, and he'd decided that waiting was no longer an option. The next morning started like any other. Sienna made breakfast, while Harrison reviewed his notes for the press conference scheduled for that afternoon. The children ate pancakes and argued playfully about which constellation was best. Normal. Peaceful. The calm before everything shattered. At 8:45, Nolan burst into the kitchen, his face ashen. Sir, we have a situation. The children never arrived at school. The security detail has been compromised. The world stopped. What do you mean compromised? Harrison was on his feet instantly. Both agents are in the hospital. Drugged. Not dead. But... Nolan's voice was tight. Ruby and Jasper are missing. The room tilted. Sienna grabbed the counter for support. No. The word came out barely above a whisper. No, no, no. Harrison's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and went pale. It's a photo. He turned the phone so Sienna could see. Ruby and Jasper sitting on the floor of what looked like a warehouse. Scared, but unharmed. Ruby was holding Jasper's hand. The text beneath made Sienna's blood turn to ice. Cancel the board meeting. Destroy the evidence. Or the next photo will be very different. You have 1 hour. Vincent. Harrison's voice was deadly calm. It has to be Vincent. He took our children. Sienna heard herself say it but couldn't quite believe it. He took our babies. Nolan traced that message. Harrison barked. Now, already on it. Nolan was on his phone. His team mobilizing. What do we do? Sienna looked at Harrison. Her whole body was shaking. What do? We get them back. Harrison's face was a mask of controlled fury. Whatever it takes. He wants you to destroy the evidence. If you do that, there's no proof. No justice. Vincent wins. I don't care. Harrison met her eyes. I care about getting our children home safely. Everything else is negotiable. But if you give in, he'll kill us anyway. Sienna's voice broke. He's already killed twice. He won't leave witnesses. Harrison's expression said he'd already thought of that. Unless. His eyes went to the evidence files on his computer. Unless what? Unless we remove his leverage. Harrison was already moving, pulling up programs, making calls. Nolan, how fast can we leak the evidence? Everything. Wide distribution. Sir, if you do that, if I do that, killing us becomes pointless. The truth is already out. There's no covering it up. Harrison's fingers flew across the keyboard. We make the information insurance. We make ourselves worthless as targets. But the company, Sienna started. I don't care about the company. Harrison's composure finally cracked. I care about Jasper, about Ruby, about keeping them alive. The company can burn for all I care. The raw emotion in his voice silenced the room. Do it, Sienna said firmly. Release everything. Right now. Within minutes, the files were transmitted. To the SEC, to the FBI, to the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal, to medical ethics boards and patient advocacy groups. Every piece of evidence, every email, every financial record, Daniel's complete research notes showing Nexaprol's hidden dangers, all of it. Public, irrevocable. Harrison's phone exploded with notifications, calls from the board, from investors, from his legal team. He ignored them all, waiting for the response from Vincent. It came 20 minutes later, a call from an unknown number. Harrison put it on speaker. You just made a very stupid decision, Caldwell. Vincent Ashford's cultured voice was tight with rage. I made the only decision that keeps the children alive. Harrison's voice was ice. The evidence is public. Killing them or killing us accomplishes nothing now except adding murder charges. You've destroyed billions in value, ruined dozens of lives. I've exposed murderers and fraud. If that ruins lives, they deserve to be ruined. Harrison's knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. Now return the children. Turn yourself in. Maybe the prosecution will consider cooperation when they're deciding whether to seek the death penalty for Catherine's murder. The silence stretched. Then Vincent laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You always were too rigid, Harrison. Too moral. Catherine used to complain about it, said you cared more about principles than people. Don't you dare speak about her. Why not? I loved her too, more than you ever did, trapped in your laboratory of a life. Vincent's voice turned cruel, and when she found out about Nexaprol, when she threatened to expose everything. Accidents happen. The confession was both confirmation and cruelty. Harrison's face went white with rage. You pushed her. Sienna's voice shook. You murdered your own sister. Half-sister, Vincent corrected. And she made her choice, just like your husband made his. Did you really think Daniel's accident was just exhaustion, Miss Hayes? He was so close to the truth. Too close. Someone had to stop him. You killed him. Sienna's legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair. You killed Daniel. I did what was necessary to protect my investments, just like I'm doing now. Vincent's voice hardened. You've released the evidence. Fine. The company is destroyed. My reputation is destroyed. So now I have nothing left to lose. Where are the children? Harrison demanded. Safe. Now. But here's what's going to happen. Vincent's words came with terrifying calm. You're going to come to me, both of you, alone, no security, no police, or I'll kill them both, slowly, while you listen on the phone. Tell us where, Sienna said before Harrison could protest. Vincent gave an address. A warehouse in Brooklyn, industrial area, abandoned. 1 hour. He said, come alone or they die. The call ended. Harrison was already moving, pulling on a jacket, checking the gun Nolan insisted he carry. You can't go in there, Nolan protested. It's a trap. He'll kill all of you. Then he kills us. Harrison's voice was final. But I'm not leaving my son with that monster for 1 second longer than necessary. I'm coming with you. Sienna stood on shaking legs. Sienna, no. They're holding my daughter. She met his eyes. You don't get to make this decision for me. We go together. They'll both be killed. Nolan looked between them. You understand that, right? This is a suicide mission, so we make it a rescue mission instead. Harrison turned to his security chief. I need you to give us a head start. Then call the police. Give them the address. But Nolan, we need at least 20 minutes before they arrive. 20 minutes is a lifetime in a hostage situation. I know, but if police show up too soon, Vincent will panic. Kill the kids out of spite. Harrison's jaw was set. We need time to get them to safety before this becomes a standoff. This is insane. This is fatherhood. Harrison held out his hand to Sienna. Ready? No. But let's go anyway. The drive to Brooklyn was the longest of Sienna's life. Every minute felt like an hour. Every traffic light an eternity. Harrison drove with controlled precision, but she could see his hands shaking on the wheel. We're going to get them back. She said it like a mantra. We're going to bring them home. Yes, and then we're going to be a family, a real family, all four of us. Harrison glanced at her. His eyes were wet. Promise? Promise. They pulled up to the warehouse as the sun began to set. An abandoned industrial building on the waterfront. Broken windows, rusted metal. The perfect place for something terrible to happen. Harrison's phone buzzed. Instructions from Vincent. Come in through the south entrance. Alone. Unarmed. Harrison left his gun in the car. Ready? He took Sienna's hand. Together. She squeezed his fingers. Whatever happens. Together. They walked into the warehouse holding hands. Like they were walking into battle. Which, in a way, they were. The interior was vast. Cavernous. Industrial equipment long abandoned. Shadows everywhere. And there, on a catwalk 20 feet above the floor, stood Vincent Ashford. He held Jasper by the collar. Below, Gerald Thorne had Ruby, a hand clamped over her mouth to keep her quiet. Richard Sterling stood by a side exit, looking pale and terrified. Let them go. Harrison's voice echoed in the space. So, you can send me to prison? I don't think so. Vincent's composure was cracking, his movements erratic. I've lost everything because of your moral grandstanding. My company, my freedom, my future. You lost it because you're a murderer. Sienna shouted. You killed Catherine. You killed my husband. And for what? Money? For power? Vincent's face twisted with rage. For the empire that should have been mine. I built Caldwell Industries as much as Harrison did. But he got the credit. The billions. The perfect life. The perfect wife. Who you murdered. She was going to destroy everything. Vincent dragged Jasper closer to the edge. I gave her every chance to walk away, to pretend she never saw the Nexaprol data, but she had to be righteous, had to threaten to go public. So, you pushed her off a balcony. Harrison's voice was steel. You murdered the mother of your nephew. Your own blood. Please. Vincent sneered. Jasper isn't my blood. He's yours. Unfortunately, I'd hoped. He stopped himself. But that's irrelevant now. What's your endgame, Vincent? A new voice cut through the tension. Nolan Bishop appeared at the warehouse entrance, his team fanning out. You're surrounded. This ends one way. It ends with me having something Harrison loves. Vincent's eyes were wild. Since he's taken everything from me, time seemed to slow. Sienna saw Vincent's grip shift on Jasper's collar, saw the calculation in his eyes, saw the moment he decided that if he couldn't win, he'd make sure Harrison lost too. No, she screamed as Vincent shoved Jasper toward the catwalk's edge. Multiple things happened simultaneously. Harrison launched himself forward, impossibly fast. Gerald Thorne loosened his grip on Ruby in shock. Ruby bit down hard on his hand, twisted free with the self-defense moves Darius had taught her. Nolan's team opened fire on Vincent, and Harrison caught Jasper by the wrist just as the boy went over the edge. Both of them hanging over 20 feet of open air. Harrison's other hand clinging desperately to the catwalk railing. His grip was slipping. Dad! Jasper screamed, the first time he'd called Harrison that out loud in 3 years. Don't let go. Never. Harrison's voice was fierce. I've got you. But he didn't. Not really. Sienna could see his hand sliding, the weight too much, the angle too awkward. She ran, faster than she'd ever moved, up the metal stairs to the catwalk, across the swaying structure, and just as Harrison's grip failed, just as Jasper started to fall, she grabbed the boy's other arm. Together, she gasped. Pull! They hauled Jasper up, inch by agonizing inch, Sienna's muscles screaming, Harrison's face contorted with effort. And then he was safe, on the catwalk, collapsing into Harrison's arms. Below, Vincent Ashford lay motionless. Nolan's team had taken him down in the chaos. Gerald Thorne was in custody, hands behind his back. Richard Sterling had surrendered without a fight. Ruby appeared at the top of the stairs, having run up while everyone was distracted. She threw herself at Sienna. Mama, baby. Sienna pulled her close. God, baby, I've got you. For a moment, they were all just there, alive, together, holding each other while police swarmed the building, and Vincent Ashford was loaded onto a stretcher. You called me Dad. Harrison said into Jasper's hair. You spoke. I was scared. Jasper's voice was muffled against his father's chest. I thought you were going to fall. I'm okay. We're all okay. Ruby wiggled between them. Are we a family now? For real? For real, Sienna confirmed. All four of us. Good, Ruby declared. Because I don't want to lose anybody else, ever again. You won't. Harrison pulled them all closer. I promise. We're done losing people. They stayed like that, a knot of tangled arms and relief, while chaos resolved itself around them. Later, much later, after police statements and hospital checks and more questions than Sienna could count, they finally made it back to the penthouse. The children were asleep almost immediately, exhausted by trauma and adrenaline crash. Sienna and Harrison stood in the hallway between their rooms, shell-shocked, alive. We did it, Sienna said. We got them back. We did. Harrison pulled her close. I thought, on that catwalk when I was losing my grip, I thought I was going to watch my son die. But you didn't. I was there. We held on together. Together. Harrison cupped her face. Sienna Hayes, will you marry me? The proposal was so unexpected, so perfectly timed and terribly timed. Sienna laughed through tears. You're asking me now? After the worst day of our lives? I'm asking you now because I almost lost you. Lost Jasper. Lost everything that matters. And I don't want to waste another second. Harrison's thumbs brushed away her tears. I love you. I love Ruby. I want us to be a family legally, permanently, immediately. We've known each other 3 weeks. I've known you a lifetime. Harrison countered. At least it feels that way. Say yes, Sienna. Please. She should have said this was too fast, too crazy, too complicated. Instead, she heard herself say, yes, yes, yes. She laughed. God help me. Yes, I'll marry you. Harrison kissed her, deep and desperate and full of promises. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. The kids are going to lose their minds, Sienna said. Let them. Harrison grinned. Let the whole world know. I'm done hiding. Done being afraid. Done wasting time. Tomorrow, the fallout would begin. Caldwell Industries would collapse. Arrests would be made. Harrison would face congressional hearings and shareholder lawsuits and a media circus that would make the previous week look tame. But tonight they were alive. They were together. They were family. And that was everything. 6 months later, the dust had finally settled. Vincent Ashford was awaiting trial, charged with 2 counts of murder, kidnapping, corporate fraud, and a dozen other felonies. Gerald Thorne had taken a plea deal. Richard Sterling was cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Caldwell Industries had been restructured. Harrison had stepped down as CEO. New leadership was cleaning house. Nexaprol had been pulled from the market pending further investigation, and Harrison was facing his own legal challenges. Not criminal charges, but civil suits. Negligence claims, shareholder lawsuits, the slow grinding machinery of justice and accountability. But in the penthouse that no longer felt like a museum, life had transformed into something warm and real. Jasper spoke regularly now, not constantly. He still had quiet days, but the silence wasn't rooted in trauma anymore. It was just part of who he was. Ruby and Jasper were inseparable, more siblings than friends. They fought over toys and protected each other fiercely and drove their parents equally crazy. Their parents, Sienna and Harrison, who'd gotten married in a quiet ceremony 3 months after the warehouse. Just family and close friends, nothing elaborate, just promises and love, and the courage to try again. It wasn't perfect. Harrison still worked too much sometimes. Sienna still had moments of panic about financial security. They both had nightmares, but they had each other, and they were learning that perfect wasn't the goal. Present was. If you're still with me, if this story has moved you, I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that broken people can heal, that chosen family is just as real as blood. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Dr. Phillips. Let me know this story touched your heart. Because stories like this, they matter. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, hope is possible. On a Saturday morning in early autumn, Harrison made an announcement at breakfast. I have a surprise for everyone. Ruby bounced in her seat. Is it a puppy? Can we get a puppy? It's not a puppy. Harrison smiled. Though we can discuss that later. He pulled out 4 envelopes, handed one to each of them. Inside were reservation confirmations. For Astor's, the restaurant where it had all begun. We're going back? Jasper asked. We're going back to celebrate. Harrison looked at Sienna. 1 year since the night, a waitress with a kind heart changed our lives forever. It's only been 6 months since we met, Sienna pointed out. Technically, the anniversary isn't for another month, Harrison admitted, but the trial starts next month, and I wanted to do this while we could still just be, without that shadow hanging over us. So that evening, they dressed up. Ruby in a purple dress she'd picked herself, Jasper in a suit that made him look impossibly grown up, Sienna in something elegant that Harrison had bought her, and she'd finally accepted without argument about the cost, and Harrison in a tie that Jasper had chosen, covered in small telescopes and constellations. The restaurant was exactly as Sienna remembered. Soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, the kind of luxury that once would have intimidated her. Now, it just felt like a place. Nice, but not magical. The magic wasn't in the setting. They were seated at the same table, table 7, where Jasper had once cried, and Sienna had knelt, and everything had changed. Remember this? Ruby whispered to Jasper. This is where your dad met my mom. I remember, Jasper whispered back. I was sad. You're not sad now. No, Jasper smiled. Now I'm happy. Across the table, Harrison reached for Sienna's hand. His wedding ring caught the light, a simple band that matched hers. Thank you, he said quietly. For that night, for seeing Jasper when I was too blind, for taking a chance on us. Thank you for letting me. Sienna squeezed his fingers. For trusting me with your son, with your heart, with our son. Harrison corrected. Jasper is ours now, legally and in every way that matters. The adoption had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. Sienna Hayes Caldwell was officially Jasper's mother, just like Harrison was officially Ruby's father. The family they'd chosen, made legal, made permanent. Let's play the game, Ruby suggested, finding beautiful things, like you did the first time. Okay, Jasper agreed. I'll start. He looked around the restaurant, then at his family. The lights that looked like stars. That was mine last time, Ruby protested. So, it's still beautiful, Ruby considered. Fine, my turn. The way Mama smiles at Harrison when she thinks we're not looking. Sienna blushed. Ruby, it's true. Ruby giggled. My turn. Harrison's voice was warm, serious. My beautiful thing is this moment, right here, all of us, together. Proof that broken things can be rebuilt into something stronger. Sienna's eyes stung with happy tears. Mine is simpler. She looked at each of them. My beautiful thing is family. Family, the one we built from grief and hope and the courage to love again. They sat together as dinner was served. Daffing, talking, planning vacations and discussing Ruby's dance recital and Jasper's upcoming science fair, being normal, being family. And Sienna thought about that night 6 months ago, when she'd knelt beside a crying child and offered a simple game, never imagining it would lead here, to love, to healing, to a family she never expected, but couldn't imagine living without. Sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places, from whispered kindness in restaurants, from billionaires desperate enough to ask for help, from children brave enough to speak again, from two broken people finding each other in the wreckage and building something beautiful from the pieces. After dinner, as they prepared to leave, Jasper did something surprising. He walked over to a nearby table where a little girl sat crying while her parents argued quietly. He knelt beside her chair, just like Sienna had knelt beside him. "Want to play a game?" Jasper asked softly. "It helps when you're sad." The little girl looked at him with wet eyes. "Find 3 beautiful things," Jasper encouraged. "I'll help. Look, the chandelier looks like it's made of diamonds." The girl sniffled, gave a tiny nod. Sienna watched with tears streaming down her face. Harrison's arm came around her shoulders. "He learned it from you," Harrison whispered. "The gift of seeing people, of offering connection in moments of pain. And he's passing it on," Sienna said. That's everything." They waited while Jasper helped the little girl find her 3 beautiful things, watched her smile through her tears, watched her parents notice and soften toward each other. One small act of kindness, rippling outward. When Jasper came back, Ruby high-fived him. "That was really cool. It's what family does." Jasper said simply, "We help people who are sad, because people helped us." In the car ride home, both children fell asleep. Ruby's head on Jasper's shoulder, his hand holding hers. Harrison and Sienna sat in the front seat, watching the city lights blur past. "I never thought I'd be happy again," Harrison said quietly. "After Catherine, after everything, I thought grief was all I had left. And now I know grief doesn't end, but life continues. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, life brings you someone who understands the grief, who doesn't try to fix it, who just stands in it with you until the light comes back." Sienna leaned over, kissed him softly. "I love you, Harrison Caldwell." "I love you, Sienna Caldwell." He kissed her back. "Thank you for whispering kindness to a crying child, for changing our lives, for being exactly what we needed. Thank you for letting me." They drove home through the Manhattan night, 2 people who'd been strangers 6 months ago, who'd been brought together by tears and trauma and the mysterious alchemy of connection, who'd become family in every way that mattered. Behind them, the children slept peacefully, safe, loved, healing. And ahead of them lay a future none of them could have predicted. Would it be perfect? No. There would be hard days, court appearances, difficult conversations, moments of doubt, but they would face it together, as a family. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the fairy tales that arrive without scars. Sometimes they're the hard-won victories, forged in crisis, tested by tragedy, proven stronger for every trial survived. Sometimes the best families aren't born, they're chosen, built from broken pieces and brave hearts. And sometimes, when a waitress whispers to a crying child in a restaurant, when a desperate father takes a chance on kindness, when 2 lonely children find friendship and shared understanding, sometimes magic happens, not the Disney kind, the real kind, the kind that transforms grief into hope, fear into courage, strangers into family, the Caldwell Hayes family, blended and unconventional and perfect in its imperfection, standing as proof that from the deepest griefs can grow the most profound joys, that second chances are real, that healing is possible, that love finds you in the most unexpected moments, and that sometimes all it takes is one person kneeling down, seeing another person's pain, and whispering, "I see you. You matter. You're not alone." That's where this story began, in a whisper, in kindness, in the simple revolutionary act of seeing someone, and that's where it ends too, not with a conclusion, but with a beginning, because every day is a chance to whisper kindness, to see someone struggling, to offer connection. Every day is a chance to be the person who changes a life, just like Sienna changed Harrison's, just like Harrison changed Sienna's, just like together they changed their children's. One whisper, one moment, one choice to show up and be present and offer love. That's the real magic. That's the real power. That's the truth this story wants you to carry with you when you close this video and return to your life. You have the power to change lives through kindness, through presence, through the simple act of seeing people. Use it. Before we say goodbye, I need one more thing from you. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and chosen family and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, hit that like button one more time. Share this video with someone who needs hope, who's drowning in grief, who's forgotten that beautiful things can grow from broken places. Comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever been the person who whispered kindness, or the person who received it. Tell me I'm with you, Dr. Phillips, so I know this message landed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you want more stories like this, stories about real love and real struggle and real hope, hit that subscribe button. Join our family of people who believe that broken doesn't mean beyond repair, because it doesn't. Broken means you've survived something hard, and survival is the first step toward thriving. The Caldwell-Hayes family thrived against impossible odds. Through unimaginable pain, they found each other, they chose each other, they became family. And so can you, whatever you're facing, whatever grief you're carrying, whatever wounds you think will never heal. Remember this story. Remember that a waitress and a billionaire and two broken children became a family. Remember that love wins, that truth matters, that choosing courage over fear is always worth it. Remember that sometimes the best families aren't born. They're built, one whispered kindness at a time. This is Dr. Phillips, reminding you that your story isn't over yet. That second chances are real. That hope is possible. That love, real, messy, complicated, beautiful love, is always worth fighting for. Until next time, keep whispering kindness. Keep choosing love. Keep believing in the impossible. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible becomes reality. And when it does, it's more beautiful than you ever imagined.